Welcome back to the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. And we have an interesting development here in the Prototype Challenge category. It's been interesting for a lot of teams here today. But Colin Brown has taken the lead and has been there for a little bit here. There he is in that Core Autosport Flexbox machine. Set the fastest time in qualifying by a bunch, but they elected to start Jonathan Bennett instead. They went to the back. They have just routinely worked their way up into the lead here, and Colin is one of those guys you were alluding to just a little bit ago, Kel. One of those really solid drivers in this category.
Really quick, and they've got a great driver lineup with Mark Wilkins being a silver-graded driver. He has been brought in for all of the Enduros this year. He just ran with them at Daytona last year. But they changed their strategy after qualifying, realizing that rain was definitely a threat for today. And they thought that the beginning of the race would be dry, so they wanted to get John Bennett his laps in early. We saw him have a quick spin, got stuck in the mud briefly, but nice recovery by this team.
Well, and it was probably, they felt they owed it to Bennett because he got in the car and started the Petit Le Mans. He drove his entire mandatory driving time in that rain at Le Mans. He said, I've never generally been real happy to get out of a car. I was at that point. And I can understand it, but Colin Brown now is throwing down some great laps, just turned a 2:16.3. Interestingly, Kyle Marcelli had done a 2:16.2 the previous lap, but had a bit of a moment here, and he had just picked up the second spot, gone around the 52. This guy, Robert Alon, and then Marcelli ran a little bit wide, and Alon was able to sneak through.
Definitely the lap times have increased. I mean, we had the Daytona prototypes that were on the wet tires running like 208s, 209s. They're back up to the 215 range. We had Durrani, who was down to a 2-minute flat. He's in the 214, 215 range. So certainly the track conditions have deteriorated with a little bit more precipitation. And it's probably more of a wet weather track in terms of the tire choice right now, as you see guys scrambling for grip.
Still, though, it's interesting. I mean, Durrani running the 2:14.9 that last lap, still faster than anybody else out there. So it looks like it's a fairly even track. Whether you're slicks or dry, it's probably a lot more comfortable to be on a wet tire, though.
Ricky Taylor last lap at 2:18. We saw him go to the slicks. So a lot of this could be traffic. We're not getting clean laps here, obviously, in terms of what we're looking at in terms of their last laps that they ran.
Well, when you've got a car, obviously, like Ricky did, that just didn't work very well on that wet tire anyway, and then it was getting rooted pretty well, you're probably a little more comfortable, willing to take a little bit of a risk and run that slick tire here. Robert Alon giving himself a lot of room to get around the 73 Park Place Porsche, which currently runs 10th in the GT Daytona category in the hands of Patrick Lindsay. And there he is, and then there is Marcelli, third right now, as that 3 lit up on the side of that car tells you in class. Here is your class leader, and that is GT Le Mans, and that is Nick Tandy. And I won't go with Dandy, that's been used.
Tandy, quick Nick. Whatever, he just gives it 1,000,000%. Just a real star of our sport right now.
And in these sketchy conditions, I don't think there's a few better in the world in these conditions.
Runs his own race team over in the UK. Just lives and breathes it. I mean, just a fantastic young man, and grabbed this opportunity from Porsche with both hands. We really see him came to the fore when he won over here the Petit Le Mans race, when he teamed up with Brian Sellers and Wolf Hensler to win Petit a few years ago, and it's like, boy, this man can really drive, and has gone from strength to strength with the opportunities that provided him.
Fantastic. By the way, those cars right in front of him, that is a huge battle for position for a top 10 spot in GT Daytona. The 45, that green Audi, that is Nick Janssen, and right behind him here, that is Terry Borscheler or Conrad.
Talk about picking your battles. You can see the speed of that GTD car with its downforce. Tandy didn't clear him easy. Now he gets to the inside. He's just really, really tricky. It's a different dynamic to last year, and the guys are still learning it. We're only in round 2 of this championship.
And got it squared up, made the move in the Le Mans curves, fitting enough. And now onto the Ullman straight. And you can see Nick Janssen way over to the right, looking for some moisture. He's obviously dealing with some of that tire deg for those wet tires at this stage.
GT Le Mans
Tandy had to open the wheel up just a little bit as Renger van de Zende came down the inside, but then floated wide.
Great dynamic, 4 classes running together, and those GTLM cars are hitting their terminal speed about 156 down that back straightaway as they get on the brakes for Sunset Bend, turn 17. This is a crazy corner. I mean, you just can't see the exit. That wall on the inside is blind through here. It's almost like running an oval in terms of going through that corner. You just got to have blind faith. Know that you're hitting your marks, but there's still those big bumps as well, which kind of runs you offline. So make sure there's some track left at the exit.
Boy, and Renger is just throwing that number 8 around. Big lurid slide through turn at number 3, Christensen corner, as we now will be calling it here. Tandy saw that, and I think said, I'm going to give him a wide berth.
Renger van der Zandt run with the Stargo Works group, and they had a bit of a problem last month. Their transporter got stolen, Greg, and they put the word out on social media. They finally found the transporter, but all the wheels and tires had been stolen, and our good friends at Continental Tire, Sherry Herman and the group there, helped Peter out, Peter Barham, the team owner there, and got them back up and running again. So it's great to see when a team has problems that everyone grouped together in terms of trying to get the word out to find their transporter, and then Continental Tire stepped up and helped them out as well.
Boy, it did ripple through social networking. It was on Facebook, it was on Twitter, and that's how it was spotted, in fact. And watching right now as Durrani working his way through some of those machines as well. Up front, the number 5 and 31, both in pit lane. Andrew.
Yeah, they're both here, as you said, and the 5 going to work here very quickly. I don't anticipate driver changes on either of the cars. They're putting another set of wets on. Wets have just come off the 5, standing right by one here. You get the pungent smell off the old tyre. A new set's going on. They're completely sticker wets these. And let's see if the 5 can make a very good pit. Fuel's still going in. And wheels spinning out there. And there goes the Wheeler car as well. 2 absolutely spot-on pit stops from the boys from Action Express.
Mr. Albuquerque gave it some boot to get up to that pit speed in a hurry, didn't he?
Gave it some wellies, certainly, but the important thing is there, or the thing that has to be noted, that they stayed on the wet weather tires. So certainly these 2 drivers, Albuquerque and Pruitt, believe that the track is not dry enough. And we're looking at Durrani's times, and also Ricky Taylor, 2:12. It was for Durrani. The previous lap, 2:15. This time, Ricky Taylor, 2:14, which is about the same lap time. So they're probably just being cautious here. They don't want to put it on slicks, as you can see, even on these fresh wets. Albuquerque just tiptoeing there through 3, 4, and 5. And the problem is trying to overtake, Greg, and there may be a dry line, which isn't even there any longer, but when you're going offline to pass the traffic, that's when you can have a problem if you're on the slick tire.
I think they may also be looking at that weather radar, because there was that clump that was coming up behind these little sprinkles that have moved through here. And I think they may be paying attention to that, but look at that, yeah. No heat in those tires yet, and floated it a little wide and didn't give it another thought. So we're going to step away for just a moment, and we'll be back with a lot more, of course, from Sebring.
The 64th Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring underway. Let's take you back just a few minutes. The last restart in still damp conditions, and a problem for the number 20 prototype challenge car coming around for the green flag, Tommy.
Just carried way too much speed in there, got out in the wet, and clouded those tires pretty solidly.
And then a battle up front between Felipe Albuquerque and Scott Sharp for the overall lead. Albuquerque in that Mustang sampling Corvette, the white and black entry, past the number 2. Works its way past.
The back of your screen, the 85 prototype challenge hits hard, but hit pretty square on the nose.
Mikhail Goikberg able to get that car back around to the pits. It was a big hit, but he's out on track. And then a problem just moments ago. Marcel Fessler in his number 4 Corvette elects to take the runoff down at the hairpin. Good call, loses a little bit of track position, but he stays in the fight. And that's what's important. Brian Till along with Tommy Kendall with you in the booth. Andrew Marriott, Justin Bell down on pit lane. And the weather considerably better than it was just a few minutes ago for the restart. But what that brings about is questions about tires, Tommy. The rain tires, they're soft. They overheat very quickly, and as this track dries, you're going to be tempted to put on slicks, but there's more weather coming.
Well, we saw Durrani went to the slicks and was showing huge speed, but then just enough rain came down to take the temp out of those tires and even them out. Most of the people who have pitted recently have put reins back on, so we'll have to monitor this.
Felipe Albuquerque, the 3rd driver in the 5, along with Christian Fittipaldi, Joao Barbosa, and actually they did go ahead and enter Scott Pruitt, who's also driving the team car, the 31, just in case Joao Barbosa was not good with the wrist that he injured. He just got his cast off this last week. But this is the team that dominated here last year, Action Express Racing, and the cars have looked so strong over this bumpy circuit. There's the 31 running second right now with Scott Pruitt on board. They seem to have this package worked out.
Now that GTD car, the 22 that came through, we think has gone to slicks as well. There's the leader in GTLM, Nick Tandy, in control. 9-second lead over his teammate.
I think there were a lot of people that thought the BMWs may have the upper hand here at Sebring this year, but with the rain came the performance advantage that the Porsches seem to have under those wet conditions, and they have really showed what they're made of. Porsche running 1-2 right now in GT Le Mans. Nick Tandy in front of Michael Christensen. As they work past GT Daytona Porsches, that was the 22 that you saw there from Alex Job racing the WeatherTech Porsche. And on board with Tandy as he heads to pit road.
It'll be key to watch to see whether they go to slicks or to another set of rains.
Well, and they're looking at weather radar down there as well, and you can make that bet because we've watched the timing screen, and there doesn't seem to be a decided advantage one way or another. What slicks will give you, it might be a little advantage in speed, but you can't run offline. Passing is difficult. What rains will give you is the ability to run anywhere on the racetrack that you need to, but the problem there is they will easily overheat. Both the 911 and the 912 on pit road.
And they are putting wet on.
So it looks like the Porsche teams have elected to stay with the wet weather tires as the crews go to work. A good stop for the 911. You see GT Daytona cars down at the bottom, the 48, that Lamborghini running second. Madison Snow behind the wheel when they came to pit lane. So just about the end of this fuel stint for everybody. And one of the things I'm sure the drivers are screaming for is, I need new Continental rubber.
Yeah, because even if they're staying on wets, the edges of the blocks get worn off when they get really hot, when the track gets kind of dry. You can see it on this dry line. I was going to point it out. You can see it in the prototypes. Even though it looks kind of dry, you can see how slow they're going mid-corner. You can also see the back of the car moving around when they put the power down. And that's the thing. It's that tread, those blocks actually squirming.
4 different classes of cars in the WeatherTech Sports Car Series: Prototype, GT Le Mans, Prototype Challenge, GT Daytona. 3 of those categories run on the Continental tire. GT Le Mans, the tire choice is open, and every one of the competitors in GT Le Mans has elected to run Michelin tires, so really only 2 different manufacturers out there right now. Corey Lewis just climbed out of this car, the leader, the number 16, the Lamborghini. Al Carter has just taken over from behind the wheel, and he was a late addition to this deal. And while he spent time behind the wheel of a Lamborghini before, did he save it? He did. It almost gets collected. And another problem, are we getting more rain on track? That's Ringer Van de Zande in the 8. He's had a problem earlier, had a broken suspension, and spent a lot of time back in the garage area. Is the rain continuing to come down, or are the tires like just starting to go away?
You're starting to see some spray, more spray. I think we're getting some more rain.
And Tommy, you and I talked about this earlier. That's the changing conditions that make it so challenging. When it's raining, well, you know what you've got. When it's dry, you know what you've got. But we're going from a dry condition to a wet condition, and every corner is exploration, so to speak. Speeds visually look down coming out of the 3-4 complex. Tom Christensen corner. As Van de Zande slips past the number 3 Corvette. Jan Magnussen behind the wheel. Let's take a look back. That's Van de Zande on 17.
Right in the middle of the corner. Doesn't even come to a stop.
And then just behind Corey Lewis, it's the 38, Josh Norman. A remarkable save, but he almost got collected by the 2 GT Daytona cars behind. One of those from Stevenson Motorsports, the other from Turner Motorsports, the 96. So great save. But
yeah, that was heads up.
For everybody.
Yeah. You're trying to pick a side. You think he's going to spin, then he doesn't. He saves it.
And for Al Carter, first time out in these conditions there in that 16, he's really having to try to learn the racetrack while he gets the handle on this car, and understand there's a little bit of debris on the front of the number 3 Corvette, or the number 4 Corvette. That's the 3 right there. You look for the 4, you'll see a black window banner on it. Oh yeah, it's not just a little bit of debris. It looks like one of the braking marker signs from alongside the racetrack. And if that stays on the grill for too long, I think you can expect overheating issues.
You think?
So I'm not a mechanic, but oh, and a problem for the 67. One of the Fords cut down left tire, left rear. I wonder if that's a part of the issue for the number 4. Dixon was running, I think, clear of the 4 at the time.
Actually, this is the 66.
We got him back out. Thank you for correcting me.
Yes.
Something you do. That's okay, Tommy. We saw the problem earlier for Dirk Mueller in turn 1 in the 66. Buried it in the tire wall pretty well, and I think Greg and Calvin talked about it. They were able to get that car back out with really very little damage to it as number 4 makes its way to pit road with Marcel Fessler behind the wheel.
I want to see the replay of this because
Yeah.
you have to go sailing off somewhere.
To his marks. Here's a replay. 66 doesn't seem to be around. That's the 3 going off. And you can tell just how slick it is, even with the rain tires, even with traction control. I mean, obviously just off the racetrack and you pick up that sand and that mud, that's going to take grip away as well. But you can tell just hard to find bite on this racetrack right now.
That's actually a slick spot, even in the dry, when the tires are coming up to temp, right when you turn in for that double or triple left hit right here. Super slick spot right here.
Through turn 11, heading down, right-hand bend is 12, and then the hard right-hander at the end of that is 13. But this is that difficult condition when you get a little bit of drizzle on the racetrack and it just creates almost an oil-like surface. As Fessler back on track. Interesting to see where that happened and trying to make sure that he stays out in front of the GT Daytona traffic. That was the 44 from Magnus Racing, as the 66 has made it all the way back to pit road. And we talked about, for the Ford guys, this is really for the 66 for certain now, just testing. What can we do? What can we learn for Le Mans? On the right side of the screen, you see the 44 and the 4, and 4 off again.
Yeah, he was having real trouble getting temp in those tires.
And just struggling for grip on the 4. Justin?
So guys, yeah, it's hard for you to tell from there, but the Corvettes are both still on slick tires. They changed the slick during one of the breaks earlier. They went from the wets to the slicks. Their wets, literally, I had a picture of one of them. They looked like jelly, Tommy. I mean, it was as bad as you could ever see a wet tire looking. Literally, the chunks had fallen, were 30% the size they should have been. And obviously, look at this, disgust and despair as they came off, and sort of optimism as the slicks went on. But obviously, they're having a little issue out there on the 4. And when it came in, by the way, it was a Patrón marker for one of the corners for the braking zones for when he went off that covered the radiator, and a lot of mud. So they're coming back in now, and now wet tires are on the wall for the 4.
This was a case where they were trying to avoid an extra pit stop, and they went on slicks because of what they were seeing on the weather map. He's had 3 offs and an extra pit stop, and now they're coming in again.
Well, and you have to. You look at the lap times that are being run up front in the 911 and the 912, 2:16 for Estrade, 2:18 for Christensen. You look down at the 2 Corvettes out on slicks, and you got 2:26 lap times. It's just way, way too slow. Take your medicine now, get in, get back on reins, and get out and see what you can do. That's what the Corvette team will do. Rain continuing to plague the drivers here and confuse the engineers at Sebring. Felipe Albuquerque continues to lead from Sebring in his Mustang sampling Action Express Corvette as he flashes down towards the hairpin. Incredibly difficult conditions here at Sebring that these drivers are working their way through. 4 different classes of cars in the WeatherTech SportsCar Series. They've got to work with each other on a racetrack that can that continues to change. Every lap, Tommy, seems to be something different.
And those two Action Express cars just really making it look easy, just running 1-2, Pruitt about 4 seconds behind. You see him right there in the 31. And even with the changing conditions, it doesn't matter what the race throws at them. They haven't really been making any mistakes, making it look pretty easy.
Nicolas Lapierre hanging on to the back of the number 5, but that red, white, and blue car just behind. Well down in the order, 2 laps off the leaders, being shown 10th in class. Let's check in with Corvette Racing and Justin.
Well, you know, all these teams are powered by executives with passion for motorsport, and Jim Campbell, all around the world, I seem to see you in a pit lane with Corvette, so that's the right place for you. But this, the first part about it is last year was a very significant win for Chevrolet at Sebring. Tell us about that.
It was. Well, 1965 Chaparral, Jim Hall won this thing with Chevy power. Took us 50 years to get back to the top of the podium. We did it with Action Express. So it's very special for our Corvette community. The Action Express guys are up on it here right now. We still got a lot of hours to go. We'd love to do it again, but the competition's fierce out there. So.
And fierce, you're in GTLM, which is, of course, the true gladiator sport here right now. And the cars are running well. We just saw the 3 come in. I guess it was the tire choice. It started raining the minute you put slicks on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we love our Michelin tires. We have a great partnership. The same engineers that engineer the race tire engineer our production tire for our Z06 Corvette. So we love them. We made the call to go to slicks, had to come back in, switch back to rains. We got a lot of hours ahead of us. We just got to stay in that lead lap for the last hour and a half, and then we got to go.
Of course, you've got some of the best drivers in the paddock, but it's also about competition for you. You're an American brand that stands proud against these Europeans coming over here in such strong force. It is great for our sport to watch all these manufacturers together.
Yeah. Well, we love this GTLM class. We're racing against our showroom competitors. It's fierce competition out here on the track every single time. What we learn on the track helps us build that better Corvette for the showroom, both the vehicle and the powertrain. And when you beat these world-class competitors, it really means something. Last year we won, we want to do it again this year.
It's full of passion, guys, and I drove the new Grand Sport. It's a pretty good car. Yeah, look out for one of those.
Bobby's just talking on the radio to one of his drivers. Very, very tricky race going on here.
Yeah, it's just raining just enough. We put slicks on, and it really started to go in our favor, and then it started to get wet again, and so it's kind of like it's teasing with us a little bit, the conditions right now, but it should dry up here pretty soon. In the meantime, we've gone back to the 25 cars on slicks and is doing pretty good lap times relative to the guys in front who are on rain tires. So it should go in their favor here soon. And we've got rain tires on for the moment, and as it dries up, we think we can make more time up with the rain tires on right now. So we'll see.
It's a real lottery, though, isn't it? Because another shower could come through any moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a lottery. We're right on the southern edge of this precipitation, and it literally could stop. You can already see on TV a dry line forming on the track, and it's just, as I say, it's just been teasing, playing with us. 1 minute it looks like it's going to stay dry, and then it starts to rain again, and then starts to, all of a sudden starts to dry up again. So it's, but I think within the next half hour or so, it'll be dry for good.
We must be so pleased with this new M6 platform.
Well, I mean, at Daytona, we had one car really was trouble-free. Here both cars qualified front row, so that's great. That was a good, nice little, award for all the work everybody's done. And I think we're competitive in the race. We just got to just keep going. Keep trying, working hard. The Porsches are good in the dry, or in the wet, I should say, and the Corvettes in the dry. So we've got to make sure we're in the middle of those guys.
A lot of twists and turns yet, Bobby. Thanks very much for your time. Go back to the keyboard.
And I'm looking at raindrops on the windshield of the number 100 BMW down the back straightaway. And as Bobby said, that's the challenge. Right now, when you look at the lap times, depending on the class, somewhere between 16 to 20 seconds off the fastest race laps that they've run. And that's because of the damp conditions. But there's not a lot of lap time difference between those on slicks and those on rain tires right now. So you're really kind of looking into your crystal ball to the future to decide what you're going to do.
Well, and in a way, these extra tools we have now make it harder. In the past, you couldn't pull up your phone and look at the radar map and see if you were what was coming, which direction it was moving. So you just had to go with what was right in front of you. Now, we saw it with Durrani earlier, where he was running those really quick laps, and then the times were about even, so you'd say there's not much to choose. Well, if it gets any wetter from there, all of a sudden those guys get in a position, if you're on slicks like the 25 BMW, where you literally almost can't make it back to the pit lane. So they're really hoping it doesn't get any wetter than it is right now.
You see the red, white, and blue Ferrari with the green highlights on it as well. Matteo Cressoni leading right now in GT Daytona. This car has run well all day long, and right now holds about a 23-second advantage over Lawson Aschenbach in the number 9 from Stevenson Motorsports. Ferrari versus Audi, and Stevenson certainly had their share of new car blues at the Rolex 24, even some here this weekend, but running well in second place, and we got a long way to go, but the Ferrari looks strong. And this is where it becomes difficult. You work through that gaggle of cars right there. You see the Ford, a GTLM car, and then the Lamborghini, the Audi, GT Daytona cars. You've got a prototype thrown in, but there is your leader, Felipe Albuquerque, who works by in the number 5, and the 31 of Scott Pruitt, that red and white number 31, the Whelen Engineering Corvette, trying to work his way through traffic. You can see the number 9 from Stevenson right there, the Audi, the red, white, and blue Audi. Now that's the 6. But that's the challenge, isn't it?
Well, and this where Pruitt's experience comes in, because he got close and could see Albuquerque, and then all of a sudden he has to work his way through all this traffic, and they're fighting amongst themselves. Some might be on slicks, some might be on dries, and this lap will be 5 seconds slower than his last lap.
All because he was hung up in the traffic. There is the 9, just in front of the 96 BMW. Klingman behind the wheel of the 96. And he is really beginning to put pressure as Felipe Albuquerque, your overall leader, coming up on the back of this battle. And this is where, Tommy, you've been in this situation. As the leader, you want to get through, but you're going through another class battle right here. You've got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of in pace mode right now. The pace has gotten more intense in endurance racing, but he knows he's got a comfortable gap, and it's to a teammate. So he knows he can be patient, and the ebbs and flows are going to more or less cancel each other out.
Impressed with Jens Klingman and the job he's doing aboard that M6 BMW from Turner Motorsport. As you see, Pruitt gets past the 67, the GTLM Ford of Scott Dixon. Up until, I don't know, December, you could call them teammates at Ganassi Racing. Pruitt no longer a part of that program as he prepares for his GTD program with Lexus that'll be coming up towards the middle of the season. He's kind of a free agent right now, filling in spots, but be interesting to go by Scott Dixon out there. It's Klingman. Is he going to get it done? He does. Impressive, and I think he just get a little bit of run off of turn 1 there. He was able to get past the Audi of Aschenbach as they headed into 2.
That is second place in GT Daytona.
Still a long way to go from here at Sebring. You see the clock in the upper left corner, just over 5 hours to go. But right now, the 4 different classes mixing it up. Who will win the 64th running of Sebring? Back at Sebring, much better weather, but a problem for the number 2, Pippo Durrani, and we were just talking in the break that he was absolutely flying in that number 2 and has had a problem coming out of turn 16 onto the back straightaway. Gets it turned around and back up to speed. I don't think he slid enough to flat spot the tires, but we'll have to see. I don't know if he got caught up in traffic trying to work his way through there, Tommy?
Well, he's on those slicks, remember, and it had gotten wet enough that they were no faster, if not a little slower than the cars on wets. Well, the track's been drying out, and all of a sudden, the temperature came into those tires, and he was catching the leader 6-7 seconds a lap. He and both the 10 car of Ricky Taylor on those slicks. And so, but it's one thing to run fast laps, but it's another thing to get around people and have to go offline. I think you're going to find he was maybe a little offline here. Yep.
He's trying to go inside the 31 of Scott Pruitt. They came through 16 Le Mans corner side by side, and he wasn't on the preferred line down there on the damp and just could not keep the rear underneath. Loops it around, gets it back started. So close moment there, especially with the different classes of cars. Car looks to be fine. I don't think he slid enough to flat spot the tire so he can get the bit in his teeth and chase him back down again. But that was close, especially with the different class cars around.
It was. I suspect you're going to start seeing people, if, again, not having a weather screen in front of us, but what Bobby Rahal said, he thought we were getting into the clear. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of people going for those dry tires here pretty quickly.
And you can tell right now, the 911 Kevin Estre in that Porsche that comes into your shot into 17. You saw how far to the right he was running. He's trying to keep the tires cool. Michelin rain tires on that 911, trying to keep them cool, running to the right side of the road. There's a look at Pippo Durrani.
22 years old, and he was the story at Daytona.
And certainly they're aware of him in Europe. I think a lot of people here in the United States really had no clue who he was, but he kind of threw the gauntlet down at the Rolex 24 and showed exactly what he could do. And impressive young man, very impressive behind the wheel for Patrón ESM. On board the 911 of Kevin Estre, and we'll head down to the Porsche camp.
Yeah, we're just standing here. Dr. Frank Wallace heads up all their worldwide motorsport programs. We just were talking about the difficult conditions, and if you're on wet tires at the wrong time, slicks at the wrong time, we've just been commentating on the number 2. They've definitely had a problem running on slicks, but it's so difficult to predict because you really are predicting against Mother Nature.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is definitely one of the most difficult situations in a race when you're drying or drying up conditions. Where's the right moment? The more important is that you really have a driver that can feel the car, give the engineer a precise feedback on what's going on the track. And at the end of the day, he makes a decision. If he feels good on the wets, he goes the wets. If he says, now I'm ready for the slicks, he's ready, but he's also responsible now out in the car.
Yeah, and obviously we watch how amazing the new 911 has been in the wet conditions over the last races. We had the wet conditions. You have drivers as well that are very confident in the car, but it is that marriage for you when you choose the drivers, isn't it? To get the right driver with the right mental approach to drive a Porsche.
Yeah, for sure. You need a guy that takes what the car can do, all the potential, and especially in the rain and under rainy conditions, out of the car. You need these guys that have the 911 feeling, and I think we have chosen 6. They can do it perfectly.
Okay, I better let them get back to work unless we're going to do the refueling. Okay.
Well, I'm down here with 3 times Le Mans winner Alan McNitch. He's down in the Stevenson garage. You're giving him a bit of advice, Alan.
I don't think they need it. They're second and third at the moment, and they've been pretty strong all weekend, especially today. In the wet weather, the car looks good, and the drivers are going well. They're happy with it. So I don't think they need any advice from me. I'm just here for a bit of background support.
But if you were getting in the car, would you want wets or slicks?
Well, when I saw the Corvettes going off at turn 10 and one of the GT3s, our car, in fact, overtaking them, I think it's still that sort of in-between phase. It's a really tricky thing here. You know it, Andrew, you've been here many times, that the circuit isn't drying that well at the moment. It's a bit cooler than it was. I've got a jacket on now, and that does mean that it's going to take a wee bit of time. It's that in-between phase, and right now I would still probably stick on the wets until you know. I wouldn't want to be the first to change, I'll put it that way.
Now, right at the front of the field is one of your protégés, Felipe Albuquerque. You've helped him a lot, but he's part of the Audi family, really, although he's not in an Audi today.
Yeah, I know, we've loaned him off to do some other things. Felipe, I've known for a long, long time, and he sort of cut his teeth with the Jota in the ELMS Championship program that really developed him towards, he's an Audi factory driver for Le Mans. But right now he's leading the race, and that's nice to see. It'll be good to see him on winner's circle if he can get there.
Great to see you here. Alan's here rather than go to Australia for the Grand Prix. That says something, folks.
Well, and it does, and it shows you just how much he loves this event, but problems right now for Dominic Farnbacher in the number 24, the Allegra Motorsports entry. He was off and right back on. That car had been running so incredibly well earlier, really opened a lot of people's eyes, but there's the number 9 from Stevenson Motorsports, second right now in GT Daytona. You know, Alan was talking about, I wouldn't want to be the first to go to slicks, but we also saw the 911 of Kevin Estre in pit lane routine service, and it was slicks going on that Porsche.
Yeah, well, we started seeing, like I said, it's like a light switch, and we saw Durrani starting to show the speed, the Taylor car showing some speed, and you want to be the first one to go to slicks that's right.
You want to be the first one to make the right decision.
And if you are, the chunks of time come in big bunches.
And if you're not right.
Well, you saw what happened with the Corvette.
Yeah.
They went to them, and they had to. So it's a gamble. We've got more tools, but the fact remains, it's still a little bit of guesswork.
Well, and of course, the other thing that we got to keep in mind this year with the GT Daytona cars, ABS. So that's the other reason why it's so challenging for some of the GT Le Mans cars in these damp conditions. Those GT Daytona cars with ABS and traction control can fight them hard down into the braking zone. We're seeing good fights all around the racetrack here at Sebring. Plenty more to come from the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. The leader at Sebring, the number 5 from Action Express, just made a pit stop. Full fuel, 4 new Continental tires, and this time slicks. We believe a driver change from Felipe Albuquerque to Joao Barbosa. Indeed, that is the case as Barbosa heads out on track. And other pit stops, see the number 60, the second car to your right. That was the second place car in prototype when they came to pit road, and also the number 9 there from Stevenson Motorsports, second place in GT Daytona when they elected to pit.
And it's going to be interesting to see how Barbosa feels to be that soon out of a cast. He talked about with the car having power steering and so forth, it's not so much a strength issue, it's flexibility with that wrist. And you know, when anyone who's ever come out of a cast, when you get to the ends of the motion, it's been immobilized for so long, it's painful. So we'll see what happens there. I have to admit, I was a little surprised that they actually said what caused his wrist break. When drivers break their wrist during the season doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing, usually it's they tripped over the dog wash in the car or what have you. And so I was a little surprised that he was as
they told the
as
truth?
he was, yes.
Well, maybe the story was worse, and that's the best they could come up with. Talk about worse, we did see a problem on the number 9 pit stop. It happened way up at the top of the shot. They dropped the 9 to send him back underway and had to stop. I believe the right front was not tight. The car went back up on jacks, and that cost them precious time on pit lane. Also understand the number 4 Corvette now on pit lane. Justin?
Yeah, he's coming in, and guess what? They are going to slicks, Tommy. So watch him pull out. Now you'll see the amount of wheel spin as he gets as he pulls away on these. Well, if he pulls away, they just did that change. They got out. But I want to quickly show you this. Come over here, guys. Show you this. Look at this tire as it goes up. That is what's happening to the tread of those tires. You know, really getting a lot of work there. Tommy talked about those blocks moving. Those weren't as bad as they were on the last time they took them off, but I think they had to make this call. Interesting, when we were just talking down at Porsche, they say the conditions are very marginal, but marginal, mate, means it can be one way or the other by 1 degree, doesn't it? So they're having to, they made their call. Let's see how those cards fall.
You don't even have to see the wear on the tire, which is evident, but it's the steam that's coming off of it. It gives you a good idea of just how hot they are, even after running down pit lane and all the standing water.
Yeah, that whole sequence did not go well for the 4th car.
No.
They took a gamble to go on the slicks. The weather went away from them. They tried to ride it out, ended up having to stop again. They put new reins back on. It really could not have gone much worse.
And now Ricky Taylor in the number 10, the black and blue prototype to the left of the screen, trying to take advantage.
Offline.
But taking advantage of the fact that Barbosa had only been in that car for a lap. The Continental's on the 5, probably not up to temperature yet. Taylor wants to not only get past, but get away a little bit before Barbosa gets his Contis up to temp and up to pressure. This is that difficult section that you were talking about, that long left-hand bend followed by the right, and then heavy braking. Down a couple of gears through the right-hander. And this gives you the run back towards the back straightaway, a really high-speed section here.
And now, obviously, you've got a pretty dry line. The curbs are quite wet, so that's something to keep in mind in terms of, you know, when it's truly dry and you can get all the way over to the edge of the curbs, like coming out here onto the back straightaway. Be interested to see if they use any curb here on the exit or not. See, they're staying away from that curb because there's still a lot of water contained in those alligator teeth.
And of course, anything that's painted, that paint fills in the aggregate, the little spots, and it makes it super slick. As Barbosa trying to come back on the number 10 of Ricky Taylor. His teammate Felipe Albuquerque had a great run behind the wheel of the 5, Andrew.
He certainly did, and he's with me now, Felipe. Well, you know about Sebring now. You know all about Sebring and where the puddles are.
Come again? Sorry.
Now you know about Sebring.
Yeah, I mean, it was tricky conditions. I think in the second stint I went too careful on the tires because I was always predicting to the end, because in the first stint I overheat them. But yeah, maybe, and also we were too conservative as well on going to the slicks. But we were leading, so we need to let the other guys take the risks, and let's see now which one with slick tires.
Was it really was it very difficult? Really had to be on it.
Yeah, it was slippery, and especially because sometimes we had grip, and out of nothing, the car just slide and almost going out, and was tricky. And then Scott was just on my back and putting pressure, and like, oh damn, this guy is, you know, he has some age, but he's still there.
It's not bad for a bloke that's over 50 years old, is he, Scott Pruitt?
Not at all. I'm a little bit embarrassed because he was just there.
Now your teammate's out. Do you think he'll be all right with his wrist? Do you think he'll be all right with the wrist?
Yeah, I think he will be all right. And, you know, when the adrenaline kicks in, he will forget about it. Well, after the race, when he will have a big wrist, that's a different thing. But the most important is the race now.
Obrigado.
Another.
Strategy's changing. The 10 on that pit stop went to slicks. I think you've got to make that decision at this point in time.
The 10 actually was on him from before, which is why they were putting so much time into that lead.
Pruitt out in front. He's got a birthday coming up, so Felipe will be even more embarrassed when there's another year that's added up. His birthday's March 25th, and I believe the number will be 5'6".
Wow. Impressive.
Absolutely impressive, as is this man, Joao Barbosa. And I was going to say, you know, it might have been a goal to get Barbosa most of his lap time in the car when it was wet, to get some of that loading off of the steering and off of that wrist. But right now, as the track begins to dry, it's going to be much, much more physical for Joao Barbosa.
You can tell just the way, the language of the car, though. He's on it. He's feeling comfortable. He's not being tentative. He's charging. The adrenaline has kicked in. Albuquerque made a good point. He says we were leading. We're not the ones that had to take the chances.
Yep.
It's the other ones that are trying to make up time. And it would have been silly for them to be the first one to slicks. They can kind of sit back and watch and say, okay, it's confirmed it's the right way to go. Here we go.
Scott Pruitt out in front in his 10th Sebring start, looking to add to 2 victories already. He's got 1 overall in 1 class. Can he do it? Well, if he's going to get it done, he still has a long way to go. We'll be right back. Drama at Sebring, the battle for the GT Le Mans lead between the number 3 Corvette, Jan Magnussen, the number 911 Porsche, driven by Kevin Estre. Battle down the front straightaway. We talk about 4 different classes of cars involved in IMSA Motorsports, and traffic, GT Daytona traffic, played a big part in this.
You know how tough these vets are. You know what kind of a hit is coming here.
And there is the 911. Here's how it happened. Well, that's Pippo Durrani with the spin that he had a little bit earlier, right after going to slick tires, coming onto the back straightaway, battling with the number 31. Problems for the 24 as well.
There it is.
Here it is.
We talked to, oh, wow, and
Huge
that
hit.
the wet concrete didn't scrub near the speed. The Corvette has no idea that the Porsche's there, and the Porsche doesn't realize how far up. He thinks he's further past, I think. Boom!
Big contact with the wall for both the Porsche and the Corvette, on board with Estre.
Now, Estre knows he's there because he's making the move on him, but he angled actually to the right to get a little bit better angle. Didn't realize that the Corvette had turned hard down.
And that is the number 9 from Stevenson Motorsport, the Audi that's being sandwiched between them, and he's in a battle with Alessandro Balzan just behind him. So they're fighting for position, as were the 2 GTLM cars.
And Magnussen was trying to drive it back.
towed Kevin Estre out. He has stayed in the car. I don't know if he thinks he can drive that back or not. I mean, the wheels look straight, but the front end, you got to think about how these cars are made.
Well, he moved the concrete.
Yeah, he moved the concrete a lot.
Those blocks each weigh, I think, 4,000 pounds.
You see Magnussen.
Jan's gotten out and probably taken a walk around the car. Maybe wanted to plug in. Yeah.
Take one more look. There's the Audi GTD car in the middle. Magnussen just goes to turn in, and I think he's completely unaware that Estre's down to the inside.
Well, he doesn't know he's there, but he also can't afford to turn in late because it's wet out there. But you see this speed. This is the thing we were talking about, where that GTD car actually has maybe more top speed until they get to the brakes.
Well, and then
get around them.
Yeah, and then you go back to anti-lock braking system, even though you're not braking all that hard into turn one.
That's just a bad decision. Ultimately, he's trying to make something happen with the pick of the slower car.
Yeah, and I go back to these days, the other class isn't that much slower. As you see Jan Magnussen walking around, looking at his Corvette, doesn't want to walk away from it just yet, trying to figure out, is there anything we can do? At some point in time, he may plug the radio back in or wait for the crew guys to get there. But as he drove away, the car not square at all. It wasn't just a steering issue. It looked like the rear end was damaged as well.
You know what I think? I think at the line, Estre was in front. So I think Magnussen had maybe gotten around him in traffic, and Estre was trying to get back around.
Significant damage to the tub up front. Like I said, if you're familiar with these Porsches, you know that, yeah, they've got a nice bumper up front, but then essentially just the standard chassis of the car, and that's going to be folded in pretty significantly. Magnussen still standing by his damaged Corvette, and this is going to take a while to clean up. Not only were the tires significantly damaged, but the wall moved where Estre made contact. Magnussen talking to the fans, giving them his point of view as to exactly what happened. And it's one of the great things about this series. We'll take a quick break and then come back while we work to clean this up. But here's a quick look going to break. Jan Magnussen in the Corvette, Kevin Estre in his Porsche, fighting for the lead at Sebring. Jan Magnussen looking to add another Sebring victory in his very familiar number 3 yellow Corvette. It's not going to happen today from the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. The fight for the GT Le Mans lead all went awry in turn 1 just a couple of laps ago. Kevin Estre in his Porsche, Magnussen in his Corvette fighting, and that brings out another full course caution here at Sebring. Let's head down to the Corvette camp and Justin.
Doug Feehan, program manager. I have 3 words: Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah, I'll sign up for that. Yeah.
What happened?
Well, Jan had affected the pass on line. The Porsche was on the inside in the wet. I don't know what he was thinking, but clearly he couldn't even come close to getting the car stopped and just T-boned Jan going into one.
I mean, it really does illustrate quite how fast these cars are going as they enter into this turn 1 area. Until something goes wrong, we really don't appreciate it.
Oh no, they're carrying a huge amount of speed in there, and obviously the line was offline, wasn't, and the Porsche was in the wet. And, I mean, there was just no way. When he was down, there was no way he was going to make the corner.
I mean, this is high-stakes poker, isn't it? There's a lot on every hand, an awful lot of investment, a lot of support. More importantly, a championship with points. And this car was going, certainly at this stage of the race, looking very strong.
Yeah, we had a strategy. We were sticking to it. You know, we went to dries earlier than everybody else because we could see that the conditions were going to come back to us. Track was going to come back, and we were the fastest car on the racetrack at that point in time. That's exactly what we hoped would happen. And the rest of the race, you know, hopefully would have been clear sailing. But, you know, weather happens, and this Sebring is famous for it. And you get caught up in it. 25% great car, 25% great team, 50% good fortune. We didn't have the 50%.
Well, I'll let you head down. You know, only 5 pits down, you can go practice your German. All right, guys.
Well, it's interesting. We were watching it again in the break. I mean, I think Doug's take on it is pretty accurate. We were talking about it looked like Estrade even moved back to the right, but Tommy, you were saying it just looks like the car was.
Well, he was just trying to get it stopped, which is why when everybody else was turning, he was still on the brakes trying to get it stopped. And there was, so that was, and that shouldn't have been a surprise to him. He knew he was down in the wet stuff, and he was so focused. And that's a case where he had just lost the lead. He was leading at the stripe. Mags had gotten around, and he was trying to get back by him. That straightaway speed of that. But even if that Audi's not there, he's not going to outbrake in the wet, not going to outbrake the 3 that's on the dry line.
No, I believe you are correct, sir. And when you look, though, to the top of the GT Le Mans category right now, who's leading?
Scott Dixon is leading in the Ford with 2 of his main competitors now on the hook.
Let's check down with the Porsche camp and Andrew.
Oh, winner Earl Bamber. I like saying that, Earl. Earl, how did you read that accident?
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult situation, Kevin was on the inside and then, Magnussen was on the outside, and unfortunately it was a little bit wet. And, it looked like he just didn't predict that he had that little grip and slid wide. So it's a shame, but, that our sister car's out. But I heard Kevin's okay, and that's the most important point because, we can fix racing cars, but, we can't fix us. So it's good that Kevin's okay, but it's a shame that both cars are out.
Disappointment, I think, for you that you won't be defending your Le Mans crown because you'll be in a 911 this year, but we understand why the cut is. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a shame to not be able to defend outright, but, we're going to have a fantastic battle in GT this year, and, myself and Fred, we're going to try and get the top step of the podium for sure, and it's fantastic to be racing the US again. We had a great start of the season at Daytona, and, the whole Porsche North America team's really, pumped for this season.
I think it was about 4 years ago. I think must have been your American debut here, and you were with a small Porsche team. You were right to the very end, I remember. Nobody talked to you.
No one really talked to me at that first event. It was a great time with Muller, and I did Daytona and Sebring, and it gave me a huge amount of experience before I came over here, and that was really important. And now it's quite interesting to come in this environment. But GTLM's fantastic. The racing's fantastic. It's great with all manufacturers there, and I don't think there's any better racing in the world right now.
Meanwhile, you've got a shot at winning this still, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we're right in the hunt there. The car was great in the wet, and Michael did a good job. And now in the dry, we weren't quite as as competitive as we were in the wet. But we're certainly going to fight like we did in Daytona, and hopefully we can put the car in a position to have the opportunity to win the race tonight.
Le Mans champ, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do indeed think they've got a great shot at it. When you look up front in GT Le Mans right now, you've got Ford, BMW, Porsche, and Ferrari, 4 different manufacturers in the top 4. It's one of the things that makes the IMSA series, so it's a great one to watch. We'll be back. Take a little look back in history, 50 years to be exact, from here at Sebring. Dan Gurney, Gary Grant, they start on pole in their number 2 Shelby American Ford Mark II, but timing chain problem with the finish line in sight, Tommy, and things changed completely.
Well, they did, and the start didn't go quite as planned. He was on the pole, but the car wouldn't fire when he took off, so he went to dead last. It took him 25 laps to get all the way to first, and then had this situation where it was taken away and some heroics to get that thing across the line for second.
Ken Miles, Lloyd Ruby, in their number 1 Ford X1 Roadster, they would take the victory, but Gurney got disqualified for that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's well worth it, though. If you know Dan Gurney, he wasn't going to take that sitting down. So one of my all-time heroes. He's usually watching our races, so if he is, hello to Dan and Evie out west. Got to be watching this new car with a lot of excitement, like everybody else is.
I was going to say,
50 years on.
Like everybody else is. I think it's really reignited a lot of passion in sports car fans, a lot of interest in sports cars, especially when there will be 4 of them at Le Mans in June.
Yeah, wow. How about Scott Dixon, man? The guy just,
the Iceman.
He's so soft-spoken and polite but I mean, everything he gets in goes to the front.
he takes everything he gets into the front.
Yeah. Well,
there's a difference. But we talked about it earlier. I was so impressed that, he didn't play the game of, no, I'm not going to go to Le Mans unless I can go in a prototype. Obviously, when you go with a factory program, as we talked about, you jump at that. But he's more than willing to do it, wants to do it, and kind of chuckled that he was a, quote, rookie again. It's been a long time since he's been a rookie. You saw the biggest movers down there, Michael Christensen in the 912. One of those, they started at the back of the GT Le Mans category, all the way up into third right now. It's Ford, BMW, Porsche, Ferrari, like we said, going to break. Dixon, then Spengler, then Christensen, then Tony Vielander. That's your top four. And then the second RLL BMW in fifth with John Edwards behind the wheel right now. It shows the strength of the GT Le Mans category. And then over in prototype, how often have we said over the years, Scott Pruitt leads? And he does, once again, with a new team, new livery. It's not the same car he drove at the Rolex 24, but the team is the same. And it was funny to listen to Felipe Albuquerque talk about being schooled by somebody that was Scott's age.
He is, how did he put it? He has lots of years, but he is still there.
Yeah, he definitely has lots of speed still left in him. And I think the fire is still there, and to some extent, when this GTD opportunity came along with the Lexus program, I think that kind of was something that Scott looked at and said, I think as I get towards the twilight of my career, or to the twilight of my career, I think it'd be fun to develop something else, a little bit maybe less pressure to get it up and going and then hand it over to somebody. But everything he does
yeah,
with one goal.
Figured, he probably figured, I've probably only got 20 more years in this game.
So
if Scott were with us now, he'd want us to say hello to his family at home. So let's say hello to them. Well, now you see all this work going on. Back in the day, this wall, when they first put this wall in, there were no tires in front of it. So those two guys are really happy that those tires were there, and now they're taking care to get the wall back in place and put some new fresh ones there, so that if we have another incident, the wall is well protected. I say well protected, well cushioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we've seen here, and you see these tire walls and you think of them as kind of an old school safety item, but think back to Townsend Bell's crash at the end of the straightaway in the rain earlier on. These banded tires held together in groups like this really do a great job of dissipating energy, and we've seen some big hits today, and those tires have been instrumental in limiting not only the damage to the car but protecting the drivers.
And what happened down there in 17 is they also have them a little away. There's two rows of them.
Yep.
Here you don't have as much room, but so when the car goes in there, it picks up a bunch of mass and has to drag all those tires with them.
Well, Pruitt hoping to get the GTD testing underway here before long, and you can tell these things are.
I think this is
not lightweight.
This is a CrossFit exercise. Not that I would know what
I was going to say
is.
I don't know either. This is the way you move tire bundles.
Yeah.
You might want to run to driver's right. He's putting some rubber down over there as he's dragging that bundle along down towards turn one. The good thing is, all kidding aside, they'll do everything they can to get the walls exactly right where they were before, the same number of tires in front of them. All that's been specified. We will not go back racing until the officials determine that the racetrack is just as safe now as it was at the beginning of this. Justin?
Well, those guys need a special drink, and we know which one they should have, don't they, Ed? So obviously, your man, once again, doing an amazing job out there in the car, but the competition at the front of this DP field, the prototype field, is very strong here, especially in these very strange conditions.
Yeah, everybody's doing a great job, but come on, he was out on slicks and everybody else was on full reins, and he was running the same lap times as those guys, so we took a chance. It didn't play out as great as we wanted, but it put us still in really good position, so yeah, he's doing a great job.
And you're just cool as a cucumber here, Mr. Van Overbeek, sitting here. Are you enjoying the show so far?
We haven't been out yet, so I think my blood pressure will go up once I go out, but looks like it's drying up. People likes the car, seems competitive, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, these guys, as you know, coming off the back of that amazing Daytona Rolex 24-hour win, you can turn back and watch how your man's doing, I'm sure it's going to be a very frantic pace when they get going again, guys.
And I'm sure the 22-year-old Brazilian will be on it big time, pressuring Barbosa and Pruitt. When we come back to Sebring, for Kevin Estra and Jan Magnussen, their day is done. Plenty more coming your way.